They said I was too much or not enough. Too loud. Too quiet. Too ambitious. Too complicated. They said I didn't make sense, especially to men. They called me intense, emotional, a handful, but mostly they said I wasn't wife material. They didn't say it to my face, not at first. It started with side glances, awkward silences at bridal showers, questions loaded like guns. So, are you seeing anyone seriously? You're still writing those little stories? Don't you want something real? I laughed, shrugged, bit my tongue, but deep down, I carried every word like a brick in my chest. Each one added weight. And when he finally said it, "You're not wife material, Ava. You're too complicated to love long term." That weight shattered into pieces. Because I believed him. I let his voice drown out my own. I didn't scream. I didn't fight back. I just vanished. They rewrote my story before I had a chance to live it. Filed me away in their mental cabinets. Too smart. Too sensitive. Too opinionated. Unmarried. Unchosen. Unworthy. But here's what they didn't see. I wasn't broken. I was becoming. It wasn't failure. It was something bigger. Just not visible yet. My name is Ava Mitchell. I'm 32 years old. And I live in Charleston, South Carolina. This is the story of how I was told I'd never be loved, and ended up writing the book that taught thousands how to love themselves. Growing up, I was the girl with the plan. Straight A's. Honor roll. Captain of the debate team. A future success story. That's what my teachers called me. And I believed them. My parents, especially my mom, used to beam with pride when someone asked, "What's Ava going to be?" And she'd say, "Oh, our Ava? She'll be a lawyer. Or maybe a professor. Something important." There was always this weight to the word important. It meant success. It meant stability. It meant marriage before 30, house in the suburbs, and 3 kids by 35. It meant fitting in the mold. And I tried. God, I tried. After college, I got a job at a corporate law firm in Atlanta. Button-down blouses, back-to-back meetings, fake smiles. The kind of place where the coffee was always burnt and the compliments were always backhanded. But I lasted. Until I didn't. 3 years in, something broke. Not all at once, more like a leak that turned into a flood. Anxiety attacks in the office bathroom. A constant pit in my stomach. Sleepless nights filled with a question that kept clawing at me. Whose life am I living? I tried to talk to my parents about it, but all I got were glances exchanged between them. My dad cleared his throat and said, "She's just taking a break." Mom added, "Don't worry, she'll bounce back. She's strong. She always has been." But they didn't ask what I needed. No one did. Instead, I was gently nudged out of conversations. Family dinners turned awkward. Friends stopped calling. And the man I was seeing at the time, Daniel, he was the one who gave it a name. "You're just not wife material." It was a Tuesday night. We were sitting in his car, rain tapping on the windshield. I had just told him I was leaving the law firm, maybe for good, that I didn't know what was next, but I needed space to breathe. He went quiet. Then he said it, softly, like he was doing me a favor. "I need someone more grounded. I don't know, Ava. You're too lost." That night, I packed my things and left Atlanta. No goodbye party. No plan. I just drove. Back to Charleston. Back to the city where I was born. But not back to who I used to be. I moved into a small 1-bedroom rental with peeling paint and a leaky faucet. Got a job at a local bookstore shelving novels I used to dream of writing. And I started over. Quietly. Alone. No one noticed. And that's how it began. The bookstore didn't pay much. But it paid in something I hadn't felt in years. Quiet. Real quiet. Not just the absence of noise, but the absence of pressure. Of expectations. Of having to pretend. It was called Honeybee Books, tucked between a flower shop and an old record store. Hardwood floors that creaked like old memories, walls lined with stories that had outlived their authors. It smelled like paper and cinnamon tea. No one there cared about resumes. Or law school. or whether I was wife material. And maybe that's why, for the first time, I started to write again. Not for a publisher. Not for praise. Not even for healing. Just because I had to. Late nights, I'd sit on my secondhand sofa with a chipped mug of green tea and pour myself out. Not poetry. Not essays. Just moments. Fragments. Conversations I never got to finish. I'd write on receipts, napkins, the backs of old parking tickets. My laptop was falling apart, so I used the Notes app on my phone. At first, it felt pointless. Indulgent.
Silly.
But I kept going. And then something shifted. It was a Thursday afternoon when Marjorie walked in. 82 years old. Wore the same lavender cardigan every time she came by. She always bought the same books, large print mysteries. But this time, she stopped at the counter and said, "My son gave me this thing, an iPad. I hate it." I smiled. "Want me to show you how to use it?" She narrowed her eyes, skeptical. "This machine hates me," she muttered. I laughed. "It just doesn't know you yet." Every afternoon for the next few weeks, she'd stop by, and I'd teach her something small. How to send an email. How to Zoom. How to download a book. One day, she started crying. I asked her what was wrong. She said, "You brought my baby into my living room. My grandson. He lives in Oregon now. But today, I saw him laugh. And it felt like he was here." That night, I went home and wrote every word she said. And I cried too. Not because I was sad, but because it was the first time in a long time that something I did mattered to someone. No applause. No trophies. No gold stars. Just human connection. It didn't make headlines, but it mattered. And for the first time since I'd been told I wasn't enough, I started to believe that maybe I was. The quiet work became something bigger. I started a community blog. Not under my name, just the corner table. A space for the elderly and their families to share stories, tech tips, and memories. I thought maybe 10 people would read it. Within 6 months, we had over 18,000 subscribers. Comments flooded in from daughters, sons, grandkids. I never knew my grandma had this much to say. My dad cried after I read him your post about the father-daughter road trip. I added a small downloadable guide. Digital basics for grandparents.
People started sharing it.
Churches, libraries, even a few retirement homes in upstate New York asked if they could use it during their workshops. Then came Elderlight. That was the name someone in the comments gave to what I was doing. "You're lighting up elderhood," one woman wrote. The name stuck. So I built it. A free email series. 1 lesson per day, written in plain, loving language. No tech jargon. Just stories. By month 3, we were onboarding 1,200 seniors per month. I learned to measure things I'd never imagined. Open rates, 78%. Completion rates, 85%. We were outperforming major brands. But at home? At the dinner table? Still invisible. "You're still doing that little writing project?" my brother asked one evening, halfway through chewing his steak. "It's not just writing," I started. He interrupted, laughing. "Teaching old folks to click buttons? Real noble work."
My mom chimed in.
"You've always been the free spirit, honey. That's okay." She said it with a pat on the hand, like she was excusing me from something serious. They didn't ask for stats or stories. They didn't see the faces I saw, lit up behind glowing screens. I stopped trying to explain. Because what do you say to people who still think your worth is measured by who married you? Daniel got engaged. To someone who posted couple selfies in matching flannel. My aunt texted me the photo with a single line. "He looks so happy." I didn't reply. Instead, I went back to the bookstore. Back to my people. My work. My stories. My worth. I started drafting a book, quietly. It wasn't a guide. It was everything I wish someone had told me. Stories of resilience, of loss, of renewal. Moments that didn't fit in blog posts. I called it, not wife material, letters to the ones who felt unchosen. I didn't expect much. I self-published. Uploaded it at 2 a.m. one Thursday night, closed my laptop, and went to sleep. 3 days later, it hit number 3 on the local bestsellers list. A week after that, it reached number 1 on Amazon's self-help and memoir category. Thousands of reviews poured in. I read this on my lunch break and cried in my car. Thank you for saying what I've never been able to. This book made me call my mom and finally tell her who I am. And still my family said nothing, not even a text. But by then, it didn't matter as much, because something bigger had begun. And I was no longer asking anyone to notice. It was a cool October evening, the kind where the air feels sharp and honest. I was invited to speak at a small local book club that had chosen Not Wife material as their monthly read. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic. 10 or so chairs in a circle, maybe a folding table with cookies and paper cups of cider. But the room was packed. Standing room only. Women of all ages. A few men, too. Some with books dog-eared and scribbled through. Some holding tissues. Some just staring at me like I'd cracked open something they thought was locked forever. I spoke gently, not as an expert, just as a woman who had lived through quiet failures and come out not with success, but with clarity. The Q&A went long. People shared their own stories. A young woman stood up and said she had just left an abusive marriage. An older man said he finally called his daughter after 2 years of silence. And then came her. She looked familiar at first.
Polished.
Warm smile. Blonde bob. Red lipstick. Maybe mid-30s. Holding a leather-bound notebook. She waited until everyone else had left. Came up slowly. You don't know me, she said, voice steady but soft. But your book, it changed something for my family. I nodded, half expecting the usual thank you. But she kept talking. My fiancé was really close to his grandma. She passed last year. Before she died, she used to read your emails to him. From Elderlight. He didn't know who was behind them. He just called them her hope notes. I felt my breath catch. But I stayed still. She opened her notebook. Inside were printed copies of my earliest posts. My logo at the top. The original pixelated one I designed in Canva on my phone. She printed them out. Every one. She kept them in this book. When she got sick, he read them to her. A pause. One night, I asked him where they came from. He said, some lady named Ava who writes like she sees through you. And then she looked up, eyes wide, a slow realization dawning. Wait. Ava, she whispered. You're that Ava? I smiled, nodded, but I didn't say anything. The moment said it all. She started crying. Not sobbing, just silent tears. The kind that come when truth finally meets recognition. He never believed people like you existed. People who write without ego. Who care without asking for anything back. She touched her heart. You gave him something to hold on to when she was slipping away. For a moment, we just stood there. No cameras. No applause. Just two strangers tied together by words. I walked her to the door. As she stepped into the night, she turned back one last time. I'm getting married next spring, she said. And I'm walking down the aisle to a passage from your book. Page 78. And then she was gone. I stood there, frozen. Because page 78? It was the page I wrote on the night Daniel told me I wasn't wife material. It began. Let someone love you not because you're easy to categorize, but because you're impossible to ignore. That night, I didn't cry.
I didn't post about it.
I didn't call anyone. I just sat by my window, the city lights flickering like quiet applause, and whispered to myself. Not because I demanded attention, but because the truth walked in by itself and refused to stay quiet. The shift didn't come all at once. It never does. There was no parade. No family reunion with teary-eyed apologies. Just subtleties. A bookmark. That's how it began. One day, I found a small padded envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a silver-embossed leather bookmark. No note. No name. Just an engraving that said, "She who writes her own ending." I didn't need to guess. It was from my mother. She never said it directly, but that was her way. Always love in shadows, approval hidden like pearls buried beneath layers of polite silence. Then my brother, David, called. Out of nowhere. Said he'd read my book. I braced myself for sarcasm. But he surprised me. I didn't get it at first, he admitted. But page 32, the part about being enough without being everything, that hit me. A pause. I'm sorry, I laughed. You were doing something real. I just didn't see it. That was all. No grand confession. No dramatic turnaround. But it was more than I ever expected. I didn't frame his apology. I didn't post screenshots. I just kept it. Like a letter folded carefully and placed in a quiet drawer of the heart. Because by then, I didn't need their permission to exist anymore. I didn't need their claps to know I had won something deeper than fame. What I had was peace. And peace is never loud. It was in the way I woke up in the morning, not dreading the day. It was in how I walk through bookstores now, head held just a little higher. It was in the emails from strangers who felt seen. The messages from women who said, I thought I was the only one. And somewhere along the way, I stopped needing to prove anything.
To them.
To the world. Even to myself. I had built something out of ruins. Not a mansion, but a home. Not a platform, but a purpose. Not a fairy tale, but a truth I could live inside. It wasn't pride. It was peace. That's what I whispered to myself one night as I watched the sun slip behind the city skyline. Not all victories come with spotlights. Some come with silence. Soft, healing silence. And in that silence, I finally heard myself. If you've ever been told you were too much, too loud, too soft, too messy, too different, or maybe not enough, not smart enough, not pretty enough, not successful enough, not wife material, this story was for you. Because somewhere out there, someone decided they had the authority to define your worth, to shrink you down to something that could fit inside their box of understanding, to clip your wings and call it love. But here's the thing. They don't get to write your ending. You do. And it doesn't matter if they never applaud, if they never call, if they never say, I see you now. You are not here to be seen by everyone. You are here to become someone you can recognize, someone you can trust, someone you're proud to stand beside in the mirror. Your voice matters, even when it shakes, even when it whispers instead of roars. Maybe your victories won't be trending. Maybe your growth won't be televised. But quiet things grow roots. And roots hold entire worlds together. So if you're watching this, sitting in a room where no one quite understands your fire, know that I do. And there are others, like you, like me, who are choosing to keep going.
To write. To speak.
To build things that matter, even when no one claps. Maybe you haven't hit your bestseller moment yet. Maybe your story is still in the middle of a hard chapter. That's okay. Chapters don't define you. Endings do. And yours is still unfolding. So tell me, where are you watching from? What have you been carrying in silence? What truth inside you is ready to breathe? Drop it in the comments. Not for likes, but because stories deserve air. And someone else might be holding their breath, waiting to hear yours. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making space for this story. And for your own. I'll keep showing up with more. For the quiet victories. For the slow healers. For the ones rewriting their names in bold ink. Because not all power is loud. And not all healing looks like a highlight reel. Sometimes, it's just you. And a blank page. And the decision to begin again. See you in the next story.